Hi, my name is Zach. I'm a senior engineer at Adalo, and today I'm going to be giving you a basic overview of the component manifest.json that is utilized in creating custom Adalo components. So let's get started. So what is a manifest.json? Well, essentially it's a way that describes the properties that a particular component will accept along with the controls that are displayed in the Adalo editor. That would be like if I click on this button here, those controls there, that's what the manifest will generate for us. If you use the Adalo create Adalo component tool to bootstrap your component, this will look very similar. If we open up our manifest.json, we have a display name, some default width and height, the component entry point, and then a props section that contains two props, one for text and one for color. Let's talk about this manifest, and then we'll talk about more of the overview of the manifest. So what does this manifest have? Well, for starters, it has the display name. The display name is the name that is showed for your component. So if I go ahead and run a yarn start on this, I have to reload adalo.com to have the actual component show here. Open it up, drag it in. The display name is what is rendered here, along with what is rendered in the naming portion. So I could call this example component. That is the custom name on Adalo, but example up here is the display name for the component. The default height and width is a value that's only utilized when a component is first dragged onto the canvas. It cannot be updated once a component is already on the canvas. So you can see we have a component on our canvas right now that's already 160 by 24. But if I was to change this to, we'll do 343, and then we'll set this up to like 64 in height. We'll save that. Restart our development server for our component. So if I click out and click back into this, this is still the same height and width that its defaults were originally. But if I come in here and drag this new component here, you can see now it has a new default height and width that is pretty much like a fluid width on Adalo components with just the padding on the sides. And it's got a little bit of extra height in it, you know. The component entry point is something we don't really have any documentation on, but essentially it's just the relative path to your component file. So the relative path in our instance is just current working directory index.js, just so you know. And then we have this props section. So the props is really your bread and butter of your component. This is where you define what props you want to accept and then how you pass that information onto your component. If we open up our index.js here, you can see that we do have two props currently available, color and text. And where we define that was here in this prop section, where we called this one text, this one color, and then we set their types and their default values. So let's modify these a little bit so I can show you some like little secrets, and then we'll add a couple new props to our component. So we have the name, text, that's what this prop will be called. If I called this text value, text value, and save that, this would no longer be text, this would be text value, and same for this section here. I'm not going to change that because I like it being text. The display name is just what the label will be in the Adalo panel. So obviously the display name here is text with a capital T. That's what the label is here in the input. For the color, it's color with a capital C. Same things over here in the panel for the label for the color picker. So the types, there's about 8 different types that you can pick from for Adalo types. There's, you know, your basics like text, number, Boolean, color, and then there's a little bit more niche ones where you have icon or date or list or action. I'm only going to touch on some of the basics along with action. Text, number, Boolean should all be straightforward. If it's text, you'll get an input. If it's number, you'll also get an input that only accepts numbers. And then Boolean will just be a toggle that you can turn on and off. Let's add a Boolean right now just so you can see what those 3 properties look like here. We'll have to add 2, text and color, but so we'll do name, or sorry, number and color. We'll say number. Display name is also number, but capital N. Type is number, and the default we'll say is 24. Okay, and let's go ahead and just add a Boolean one too. So now that that's saved, restart our development server. We can click out of this component for right now, then click back in. So now you can see number is number, only accepts numbers, and then Boolean is a Boolean value. Also does not like being empty. So that's like the basic types. Let's add an action real quick. But before we do the action, I want to show you child components, because child components are super cool. So after props, let's add a new key called child components. This will be an array that accepts objects, very similar to props. We'll give this a name of actions, a display name of actions, and then props, where we'll create some props. You can really think of child components as like a mini manifest.json, where it's just it's additional information being passed on. How this will play into your component, we'll get to in a second. So let's add a new prop. We're going to call this use actions, sorry. And then we will give it a display name of, I'm going to follow what Adalo calls our actions, which is click actions. I would recommend you do the same for users to have some familiarity, but you can call them just actions or whatever. And then we'll give it a type of action. Okay. Restart our server. Now you can see that we have some accordions going on. We have our base accordion, which contains all of our manifest.json's props, like the initial props, but then we have our child components, which are the additional accordions down here. So we have this actions one. Click into that. You can see that we can now add actions. Now, how do we use these actions, you might be asking? Let's do that right now. So we'll come over to our index.js, and I'm going to go ahead and open up the React Dev Tools in my browser. If you do not have the React Dev Tools, they're available for Chrome and Firefox for free. I highly recommend downloading them. They will make your experience working with React a billion times more enjoyable. So we will search for our component name, which is example. So we have our example component here. We have these default props like height, width, but now you can see we have this object prop called actions. Where did we get that from? Well, when we called our child component actions, that's where that name was generated from. Then we have a sub action or sub key called use actions, which is what we defined in the props of that child component that is now undefined. Actions will return undefined or null whenever there is no actions. So when there's nothing in there, it's going to return undefined or null. That's good for us though, because if we come back to our component and say, let's create a function called handle submit. We're going to make this asynchronous. We will grab the actions from our props, and then we'll say if actions.use action, sorry, plural, then we'll await actions.use actions. So this will allow us to fire actions if they're available. Otherwise, we can do whatever we want, like, afterwards or before or whatever your functionality needs to be. Since we're only going to worry about doing actions right now, we'll just have our entire function just be this. So let's go ahead and grab ourselves a button from React Native, pass in a button and do an on press. And we're going to say this.handle submit will be our on press action. I'm not going to put any text in it because I'm not worried about that. And look, now we have the actions. If I preview this and I try to do anything, this should not do anything because we have no actions passed. However, if we add an action and we say, let's link to a test screen, click preview. If we click on this, that works. Last but not least, I wanted to talk to you very briefly about the control prop and how that works. Essentially, the control prop allows you to change the type of control that is used for a prop. So like, let's say I had a new prop and we're going to call this size because the name is going to be called size. The type is going to be text. The display name is shirt size. Okay. But I don't want them just to type in the value or anything like that. I want them to pick from a specific setup. You can say control. Then we open up an object. You can say the type is menu, and the options, which is an array that has two keys, label and value. So here we can say large LG, the value will just be LG. Then I'll do small, medium. You can now see we have a shirt size, but instead of it being an input, it is a menu where you can click small, medium, large, and that's the value that'll be reciprocated in your props. Like if I come to my components, we go to example, we can now see there is a size prop and it's returning medium. Change this to large, it'll return large, so on, so forth. So that's been a basic overview of the component manifest.json for custom Adalo components. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them down in the comments section down below. If you have any additional questions past that, you can reach out to us at support@adalo.com, or you can join our Slack community and ask the community members around you. My name has been Zach. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.